It's the beginning of the 15th century, and the sons of the King of Portugal are ready to become knights. They must prove their bravery and skill at arms. But how's this to be done, they wonder, now that the war with the Arabs is over? The king, their father, decides to hold a year-long series of jousts and tourneys, competitions in which his sons may prove their valor. "See to it," he tells his treasurer. But the court treasurer is horrified. "The expense, my lord," he exclaims. "It would be cheaper to have a war." The three princes agree. "A competition is no substitute for the real thing," they say. They persuade King John to attack the Arab city of Ceuta in North Africa, a short distance away across the Mediterranean Sea. "It is our Christian duty to attack the Muslims wherever they are," declares the king's third son, Prince Henry, and he organizes the building of a huge fleet of ships. The Portuguese attack, and Ceuta is captured. The three princes distinguish themselves in the battle and return in triumph to receive their knighthoods. But Henry is still not satisfied. "We must continue the fight against the heathen Muslims," he insists. But Portugal is a very small country and not wealthy. It is situated right on the southwest tip of Europe, facing the wide Atlantic Ocean, and the powerful Muslim empire spreads to the south and east of the Mediterranean, cutting Europe off from the rest of the world. All the valuable goods from the Orient, from China and India, spices and silks and precious stones, all these goods must pass through the hands of Arab traders before they reach Europe. This trade has made the Arabs rich. And Venice and Genoa, two city republics of northern Italy, have also become rich. They hold a monopoly on trade with the Arabs and allow no other European country to interfere. What can Portugal do against such powerful enemies? But Prince Henry is filled with energy and enthusiasm. "Perhaps we can sail south along the coast of Africa," he says, "and come upon the Arabs from behind." "We will need skilled sea captains," says Henry. And so, right in the southwest corner of Portugal, facing the waves of the Atlantic, he builds a school for seamen. And soon men are sailing south from Portugal to explore and map the western coast of the unknown continent of Africa. But the new captains are very young and afraid. Despite their training, they remember the old stories of the sea that rushes over the edge of the world. "Beyond Cape Boyador," they say, "the ocean is too shallow and is swept by fierce currents. There monsters live, and the sea boils and steams, and men turn black in the sun before they die." And so, rather than risk these terrible dangers, they sail into the familiar Mediterranean. And there, in the hope of pleasing Prince Henry, they attack the ports and ships of the Arabs. But at last he has had enough. "Go back," he shouts at a young captain, "and do not dare to return until you have gone beyond Cape Boyador. I will hear no more of these stupid stories. Begone!" The young captain, whose name is Gileanas, is ashamed and returns cautiously to Boyador and eases his ship slowly and carefully just beyond it. Nothing happens. There are no shallow reefs, no water that boils and steams, no monsters, no terrible currents. Gileanas and his crew are overjoyed and hurry back with their good news. Henry is mightily pleased and makes Gileanas a knight. A barrier of fear has been overcome at last. And so the ships of the explorers venture southwards. They bring back seal skins and seal oil, and trade with the natives for animal furs and ivory and pepper. And they bring back slaves. Men, women, and children are captured, or are bought from African slave traders and are taken back to Portugal to be sold. Sometimes the Africans fight back and drive off or kill the Portuguese. So the ships sail further south to areas where they are not known and where the natives can be taken by surprise. The cost of exploration is great, and slaves are valuable, and so Henry encourages the trade. He watches the slaves' misery as they are sold. "They are souls brought to Christ," he insists, hoping they will become Christians. And so more and more ships make the journey to the west coast of Africa. The landscape of Africa changes slowly. On the early voyages, the explorers sail along the fringe of the barren Sahara. But gradually to the south, the country becomes greener, with thick jungles and deep rivers from which rise hippopotamuses, called water horses by the frightened Portuguese. They see new stars in the southern sky and know that they are nearing the equator, which has never been crossed by a European before. In the year 1460, Prince Henry dies. His goal of attacking the Muslim Empire from the rear has not been achieved. But he has turned Portugal from a small, poor country into a proud nation of daring explorers and traders. History will remember him as Prince Henry the Navigator. The voyages of discovery and trade continue, and the seamen begin to wonder if perhaps it is possible to sail all the way to India. They dream of the riches of the Far East, so they press on eagerly. But the African coast seems to stretch on forever. In 1482, a ship sails into an area where the seawater is fresh. "We must be near the mouth of a great river," says the captain. He is right. They have discovered the mighty River Congo. In Portugal, the ruler now is King John II. He is impatient for results. Strange stories have long been told of a mysterious Christian king called Prester John, who is supposed to rule somewhere in the heart of Africa. Perhaps if they find him, this king will help fight the Muslims. He calls 2 trusted spies before him. "I need to know 2 things," he tells them. "First, is there really a Christian king called Prester John who will help us fight against the Muslims? And second, can we really sail all the way to India? Or, as this old map shows, is there a huge land barrier that we have not yet discovered?" The 2 spies set off. One travels south into Africa in search of Prester John, and the other goes east on the long road to India. And then King John summons a skilled sea captain, Bartholomew Diaz. "You are to find the southernmost point of Africa," orders the king. "You must succeed." Diaz's expedition sails south along the African coast. Beyond the Congo River, the 2 ships are caught in a fierce storm and are blown to the southwest, far from land. The wind grows cold, and the water too, and the waves loom higher. After nearly 2 weeks, Diaz is at last able to turn east in search of the coast again. But there is nothing. The horizon is cold and empty. But Diaz is not dismayed. "We are too far south," he tells his crew. "We have passed the southern end of Africa. We will turn north." And so they come to land on the southern end of the continent. They have succeeded in their mission. On the way back, Diaz names the southwest point of Africa, which they missed earlier because of the fierce storm, the Cape of Storms. The expedition returns to Portugal, and King John is so pleased that he changes the name of the cape to Cape of Good Hope. "Our next expedition will travel all the way to India," he declares, hoping for good news from his spies. And the news, when it comes, is good, mostly. The spies have found no trace of Prester John. Perhaps he never existed at all. But they say that it is definitely possible to sail all the way from Portugal to India. But now there is trouble for the Portuguese. Spain, their larger neighbor, also wants to reach the rich lands of the Orient. The way around Africa is closed to them by the Portuguese. So Christopher Columbus, knowing the world to be a sphere, sails west across the Atlantic Ocean. He returns in triumph and boasts that he has reached the islands of Japan. "How dare the Spanish interfere after all our efforts?" shouts King John in dismay, and he threatens war against Spain. The two countries take their argument to the Pope, who draws a north-south line on a map of the wide Atlantic. To the east of this line will be the domain of Portugal, he says, and all territories to the west will belong to Spain. Is that clear? Nothing is clear. Has Columbus indeed reached the rich lands of the Orient? Why do his discoveries not match the descriptions given long ago by Marco Polo? The argument between Portugal and Spain continues. Columbus again sails to his strange western islands, but still he cannot find the silks and spices and jewels that should be there. It is indeed a puzzle, he says. I need a little more time. But the new King of Portugal, King Manuel, is in a hurry, and he summons Bartholomew Diaz. We must be quick, he says. If we are to beat the Spanish, you are to build 4 new ships, the best possible, for the great attempt on India. And so, in June 1497, 70 men set out from Portugal on the longest sea journey ever attempted by Europeans. Led by Vasco da Gama, the ships carry 20 guns, called bombards. And for the crewmen there are crossbows and armor, as well as the usual stock of swords and knives. They are ready for anything. After 6 months, they pass the furthest point reached by Bartholomew Diaz. So they land and celebrate, and burn their empty supply ship, and dance and sing through the night with the friendly natives. Then they sail on, north along the coast into the Indian Ocean. They're looking for the important port of Sofala, where they hope to find knowledgeable pilots to guide them to India. But they cannot find Sofala, and come instead to the Muslim-ruled city of Mozambique. The local people think they must be Muslims, and make them welcome. 2 pilots are brought to the Portuguese, and they talk freely of the other ships in port, and of their valuable cargoes of spices and gold and precious stones. But Vasco da Gama is a proud man, and will not lie. My men and I are not Muslims at all, he announces. We are Christians from Europe. The 2 pilots are horrified. Our enemies, they whisper to each other. They must be pirates. We must warn the town. So the next time the Portuguese come ashore to fetch water, they are ambushed, but they beat off their attackers and escape. But the ships need water, so da Gama orders the guns to be fired in warning. After this demonstration of strength, they are allowed to take all the water they want. Again they sail north, taking the 2 frightened pilots with them. In Mombasa, another port 800 miles further north, they are attacked again. The boarding party is repelled, but the 2 pilots jump overboard and escape. The 3 ships put out to sea, again without knowledge of how to complete their voyage. But then they sight a small Arab vessel and capture it. They take the Muslim crew hostage and sail on to the port of Malindi, where da Gama offers to exchange the hostages for a pilot. The local sultan agrees and gives them not only a pilot, but also presents of valuable spices. He declares that he has always been a good friend and admirer of the mighty Portuguese. Vasco da Gama thanks him, but inside he is laughing. I am sure he has never heard of Portugal before, he thinks. And so the 3 ships sail northeastwards from Africa out into the Indian Ocean until at last they sight the coast of India. The crew is wild with delight. More than 11 months after they left Portugal, the ships anchor off Calicut, a major trading port on the southwest coast of India. The strange ships cause a sensation in the city. One of the crew members is sent ashore and finds 2 Arab traders who speak his language. They look in astonishment at his ragged figure. "What are you doing here?" they ask. The man draws himself up proudly. "We come," he announces, "in search of Christians and spices." And so it is. After 80 years of effort by the people of a tiny country far away on the distant edge of Europe, the riches of the Orient are at last there for the taking. And the Portuguese do take them. Despite the efforts of the Arabs, more and more ships come to the east, and soon the Portuguese control all the rich trade to Europe. Venice and Genoa have lost their monopoly, and the Muslim Empire is severely weakened. And so, without a war or help from the mysterious Prester John, the goal of Prince Henry has been achieved. And meanwhile, off in the strange lands of the Western Atlantic, Christopher Columbus is still wondering where the silks and spices and precious stones are. There has to be an answer to this puzzle, he is saying. Give me time, just a little more time.